All right. So we've talked a lot about building an app that can be installed and extends the product directly. But what if you have an existing cloud service? How can you integrate the two when it doesn't necessarily make sense to have your users live in the Atlassian product? So in this talk, get into the flow with the OAuth 2. We'll learn a lot about what we talked about at the keynote earlier this morning, about how to use OAuth 2 authenticated code grants to enable users to integrate with a cloud service. Our next speaker is a software developer from Sydney, Australia. Please join me in welcoming Eero.
Thanks. There's a thing. Something's missing. Just a minute.
Use the keyboard and go from.
Okay, thanks. So I'm Eero, and I'm going to give you a talk about OAuth 2 and specifically about the Authorization Code Grant flow for OAuth 2, also known as real law. So I guess you all saw the keynote. So this talk is just going to dive a bit deeper into the details of the OAuth 2 flow. So we'll look a bit closer how to actually build an app using OAuth 2. Yeah. So in the last couple of years, well, maybe in the last 10 years, there's been this change about how we build software. So we have this thing called cloud, and all the software is moving into cloud. But it's not just changing where we run the software. It's also changing how we think about the software, how we work with the software, and how different kinds of software products integrate with each other. And let's go into the details. So yesterday, back in the old days, you almost always used to have your own server. You had your own hardware deployed to your own data center, and then you maybe had like 7 or 9 different firewalls on top of your software, so that nobody could reach out to that software running in your own data center. And then what's also common was that all of the software was provided by a single vendor. So all the big vendors tried to come up with kind of pre-integrated solutions that did everything for some target segment, like software developers. You would buy all of your software development tools from one vendor, and they would be integrated with each other. And then all the vendors kind of tried to protect all of these walled gardens, so that nobody could integrate with that easily. And really, like, there wasn't, because nobody could talk to your server anyway, so there wasn't really any point in integrating. So today we are running the services in cloud. So that removes the firewall. So any software can talk to any software, really. And then also what people like to do is that they like to pick the best tools for the job. They don't always want everything provided by one single vendor. So you generally try to use kind of best of the breed solutions for like specific tasks. And then we also expect seamless integration between the different tools. So even if they are provided by different vendors, we expect them to work together. Okay, and let's take a look at an example. So this is Gmail. So as you might know, you can't even buy an Atlassian email client or Atlassian email server, even if you paid us a lot of money. We won't sell you one, so you have to use an email solution provided by something else. But then also, in the meanwhile, you use that email to communicate about things that happen in Atlassian products. Like in this email we have couple of links. One of them couple of them point to Jira, and one of them points to a Bitbucket pull request. Now, if you look into the right-hand side, we'll see something new, something that's not there by default, and something that's not actually built by Google. So that's the Atlassian Gmail app, which will provide you some context about all the Atlassian links in the email. So for the Jira ticket, you can see the status, you can see when it was last updated, you can see the description of the ticket, and also a bunch of other information. And then when we select one of those things, like in this case we select the Jira ticket, it will expand. It will expand, and we can also perform some actions in the sidebar. So we could change the status of the ticket. We could leave a comment and do things like that. So that's all happening inside the Gmail client. So the user doesn't have to leave the application to get stuff done in Jira. And that's the kind of level of integration people these days expect. My second demo was about Visual Studio Code, but I think I'll just skip it because you already saw it in a keynote, and I'm kind of running late maybe. So I'll just skip it. Okay, so let's say you have a software product you want to integrate with Atlassian products. Let's say you have built your own reporting software solution as a service, and you want to pull Jira data into it. How do I build apps that integrate with Jira? So the answer is OAuth through Authorization Code Grant, so also known as TRILO, which comes from three-legged OAuth. So it's sometimes a bit confusing, like what all of those three legs are, because depending on how you count, you could also come up with 4 legs or 5 legs, or maybe not 6, but like 5 at least. But usually these are the 3 legs. So you have a resource owner. So that's somebody who owns a resource. So in the case of the Jira Gmail integration, that's a user who has access to Jira. So they have access to stuff in Jira, and then you have a resource. So that's the thing being accessed. Usually it's a REST API, but the resource is that data behind the REST API. So in the Jira Gmail example, that's all the Jira issues the user has access to. And then you have a client, and this client is your app basically. So in the Jira Gmail example, we have some I think the stuff is called app code. So you implement Google Apps using this app code, and this app code runs inside Google servers. So that's the client. Okay, so this OAuth thing, it's an industry standard. It's really like the most common protocol to use to implement this kind of service-to-service integrations in the cloud, and it's pretty easy to implement, as we'll see later in the talk. And there's also a lot of tools not only for writing your service, but also for debugging and running the requests. It's user-driven, so the app can be installed by the user, so you don't need an admin to install the app, and it will also run as the user, so it will respect the user's permissions. It will only see stuff the user can see, and it can only do things the user can do. Okay, so you have seen Ralph's talk about Connect. So at this point, you might be kind of wondering, what's the difference between TRILO and Connect? Like both are ways to build apps for Jira. So In Trello, we have user consent, so the user has to give access to their data, their resources. And in Connect, we have the admin who installs the app and then grants the access. By installing the app, grants the access to all the things in the site they installed the app to. Trello runs as the end user, so it will execute using the end user's permissions. It will only see stuff the end user can see. In Connect, we have a special system user installed, so which will get some basic permissions and really like run as the app. So you can set the permissions for that system user separately. That's mostly. There's also a way to do user impersonation with Connect, so you can also impersonate users. Trello doesn't have any way to extend the UI, so you can't add things to Jira. You might be able one day. It would be possible in theory, but we don't have that yet. In Connect, you can specify extensions in the app descriptor, but that's static. So you have to know beforehand what kind of extensions you want to add. Let's take a look at an example app. So we have two things which do kind of similar stuff. So we have Jira Business Intelligence solution, which will just pull data from Jira, and it will use that data to compile reports and show trends and graphs and stuff based on those issues. So that would be a good Trello app. So that's a complete standalone solution. So if the user is using that app, they don't have to touch Jira at all. So that app will just pull data from Jira in the background and display that data in some different formats, in some different UI. And then we might have like a Jira statistics app. So that app could show things like issue view counts, who's looking at the issue, who has been looking at the issue, what's the most viewed issue in a project, that kind of thing, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of related to compiling the statistics, but the key difference in this would be that app is actually showing the data inside Jira. So it's extending the UI in Jira. It's adding some custom statistics in the issue view, for example. So really, like the main difference between like when to use Trello and when to use Connect is the direction. So Trello is for displaying, is for accessing Jira data outside Jira, and Connect is for accessing this data, accessing the features of your third-party product inside the Jira UI. So that's the main difference. Okay, so next we'll take a look how the authorization code grant flow works, how you would actually build an app. So we have the three legs again: the client, the user, and the resource. And you kind of read this from bottom to top. So we start with the client asking the permission from the user to access some data. So that's the first step. First the user will have to give permission to access some data. And once the user has approved, we'll get back an access code, and then using that access code, we can get back an authorization code, and then we can exchange that authorization code into an access token, and then in the last step at the top, we can use the access token to access the resource to hit and REST API. Okay, so let's expand this a bit. So now we are looking at all the steps you have to complete to build a simple app. So First, we'll be creating an app in app management in developer.atlassian.com, and then once we have an app, we have to create an authorization URL. So that's the URL where we'll send the end user to get the consent. And then once we have the consent, we'll get back an authorization code, and then, as I already mentioned, using the authorization code, we can get an access token, and then we have a special Atlassian specific step. So I'll explain this a bit more later, but when we have the access token, we don't at this point know what we can access using that access token. So we have to check what kind of access we get using that access token, and then once we know that, we can call an API. Okay, so let's start with creating an app. So that's in developer.atlassian.com. So the app has a couple of really basic things. It has a name, of course. It has a description. It has an avatar, which is displayed in a bunch of different places. We'll see later, and also the description. And then it has two kind of really important things, which are the client ID and then a secret. So every single app you create in app management in developer.atlassian.com will also create an OAuth client for you. So OAuth client is the kind of official term for the client, so that's what's going to show up if you read about OAuth. So you get an OAuth client with your app, and the client ID is the ID of that client, and the shared secret is a shared secret, which is used later. And that's something you have to store really securely, so don't lose that one. And now that we have an app, like rest of the flow can be completed pretty much manually, even using the browser, using some command line tools, and that's actually what we do in the example. So once we have an app, we have to specify which APIs the app can access. So in the app sidebar, we have this little Add APIs and Features tab. So we'll just click that, and we get a list of all the APIs available. It might look a bit different for you. Some of these things are still not public, and some of them might be going away at some point. But anyways, it's a list of all the APIs available. So we'll just select one, which is the Jira Platform API, and then we get a list of scopes. So this is pretty much the same thing as it was with Connect. So each REST API in Jira is associated with some scopes. So the idea of the scopes is that you can restrict like what kind of access your app has. So it's easier for the people installing, people authorizing the app to know what the app can access. So they might, for example, if you don't have to write anything, you might want to leave that scope out, and then people might be a bit more happy to give your app access to an instance if they know it won't be able to change any stuff, and it won't. So only select all the scopes you need. Don't just pick all of them. And then we have one extra thing. So we have to specifically enable real low for the app. So that's called Authorization Code Grants down in the bottom. So we'll just select that one. And then we need a tiny bit of configuration. So we need some kind of way to send the access token back to your app, and we use this thing called Callback URL for that. So this URL should be pointing back to your app. So we'll see that later, but basically you'll get the access code in a URL parameter in this URL, and then you have to pick that up and use it. But if you just want to play around with things, you can do this in in your browser without having like a real server up somewhere. So you can just use localhost or something for the callback and just copy the access token from there. Okay, so the next configuration bit is the authorization URL. So this is actually something you can, we have an example in app management, so you can just copy from app management, but I'm just going to show how it looks like. So this is the URL where we send the user to give the consent to access the app. So again, if you just want to try it locally, you can just open up the URL in the browser, and then that's it. If you're building a real app, you have to pop up a new window and then point that new window into the URL. So the URL has a bunch of stuff. Most of it comes from the OAuth spec and is kind of mandatory. Some of it is a bit Atlassian specific, but still mandatory. It's all documented in the doc, so I won't go into too much details. So we have audience, that's api.atlassian.com. That's the new API gateway we have. So and then we also have the client ID, which is the client ID we got from the previous screen, and then we also have to specify the scopes we want to ask for. So every time we send the user through the consent flow, we can ask for different scopes. And then we also have to specify the redirect URL. That's mostly because it's in the spec. So in theory, you could have multiple redirect URLs for your app. It's not supported by us yet, but might one day. So that's why you have to include this one. Then there's also a state parameter. So this is a bit tricky. So that state parameter should be like a unique value generated by your app. So that's something we'll send back in the authorization in the redirect. So you should set that into a unique value, save it in a session or something, and then once you get the response back, you should verify that the state matches. So that's basically to prevent fake authorizations for your app. There's also a response type code which comes from the spec. That just means that you want an access authorization code back. There's prompt consent, which is Atlassian specific thing. I'll explain that a bit more later. Okay, so when we open up that URL, when we send the user into that URL, this is what we'll see. Oh, sorry, not yet. So this is what we'll see. So we'll see the avatar for the app. We'll see the name of the app. We also see all the scopes for the app, and if we can expand those to see the descriptions, and then we see this authorize for dropdown, and that's really like an Atlassian specific thing. So Atlassian has this little bit uncommon user identity model. So we only have one Atlassian account for every user, every physical user. So let's say you're like a developer building apps for Atlassian. So you might have access to multiple different Jira conference instances. For example, you have ecosystem.atlassian.net, which is the common Jira instance we use for most of the ecosystem related work. So that's where we have all the bugs we have in Connect and that kind of thing. So you have access to that one. So ecosystem.atlassian.net is one site. It's what we call site. And then you might also have, so if you're building an app, you might also have your private Jira instance like mycompany.atlassian.net, and you do all your private work on that instance. So, and that's another site. But even with some SaaS products, you might have completely separate user bases for those two sites. So they might have completely different users. But with the Atlassian model, you have the So like the one user can be a member of multiple different sites. So that's why we show this authorized for dropdown, that you can select which site you want to give access to. So that's just to give like bit of extra security for the user, so that you might have like some Jira instance with super secret important stuff, and you might not want to have any third-party access to that. So this is the tool we use to control that. That's going to complicate things a bit, as we saw later, but right now it's what we have. And then we also show how many installations you have in the app has in the bottom. So that's just to provide some kind of extra trust for the user. So if you go and authorize Gmail and you see 5 installation, you might think that okay, something is wrong and this could be a fake Gmail app. Yeah, and then you basically just click accept, and what happens after you click accept is that the end user gets redirected back to the URL we specified earlier in app management. So that's how you get the authorization code. So the URL is pretty simple. It's first it has that's the callback URL we specified earlier. It's just and then it has one query parameter called code. So that's where you get the authorization code, and then it also has another one called state, and that's the state we set earlier. That's the state you should use to prevent spoofing. Okay, and now we have the code. So if you have been paying attention, we haven't actually been checking the shared secret at any point beforehand. So at this point we just sent you a code, but we as Atlassian, we don't really know that we actually sent that code to the real app. So in the next step we'll have to use the authorization code to get an access token, and also to verify that we're actually talking to the real app, that it's not some fake app. So getting an access token is pretty simple. It's just a post call to this URL on auth.atlassian.com. You specify some standard stuff like the content type, and then some JSON payloads. So you send the client ID, and now you send the client secret, which we use to verify the call, and then you send the code, which you've got in the previous flow, and then you send the redirect URL again. Okay, and then you get back an authorization access token. Okay, and in the consent screen you saw the site selection. So really, like at this point, we don't know which sites the end user can access to. So we have to hit a special API in Atlassian to check which APIs the user can access to. So we'll just use the access token we got in the previous step. We added in an HTTP header, in an authorization header, and we call this accessible resources API. And what we get back is a list of what we call sites. So the sites have an ID, so that's really like the most important bit. So that ID is how we use to identify the site in the new Atlassian API gateway. So that's the thing your app is really interested in. The sites also have a name. So sometimes that name actually matches the host name of the site. So it could be an ecosystem.atlassian.net, but it's actually something the admins can set themselves. So the host name is just the default, so you shouldn't really trust that and try to use it to do stuff. You actually have to check the host name using some other API instead once you know the cloud ID. So it could be used if you want to let's say in your app, if you want to display a site picker, if you want to give the user an option to show option to select which sites they want to access, then you can use this name in the site picker. And we also have an avatar for the site, so you can display an avatar for the site. And then we also show which scopes were granted access for that site. Okay, now that we know the cloud ID for the site, we can call an API. So that's really quite simple. So all the APIs now live under api.atlassian.com. So in this example, we have Jira. So all the normal Jira APIs, like the Jira APIs you would use for Connect, they're kind of mounted under x/Jira path. And then after x/Jira, you put the cloud ID you got in the accessible resources request. And then comes the rest of the normal Jira site URL. So in this example, it's just REST API project. And it will give you all of the projects. You just add the access token you just got in an authorization header, like in the accessible resources call, and that's it. So basically, that's it. That's how you build a functional real-low app. And as you saw, you could just run it in a browser manually. Yeah, you can go to developer.atlassian.com, create a new app, and you can do a REST call like really easily, manually, if you want. So you don't even need to have a server running if you just want to play around. And even implementing that server is not going to be super hard once you need it. It's kind of available for Jira platform. So Jira platform is the common API we use in all of the Jira products, like Jira Service Desk, Jira Core, Jira Software. So issues, projects, stuff like that. It's also available for Jira Service Desk and Confluence. And what available means at the moment, as of yesterday, is that Jira and Jira Service Desk are kind of in a public beta. So anybody can go to developer.atlassian.com and create a new app for Jira and Jira Service Desk. So you can start writing new apps. But if you want to make your app public, so that somebody else can install, authorize your app, you have to open up a ticket with us, and then we'll do some kind of review. And Confluence is still, I think, in private beta, so you have to actually be in touch with us if you want to use the Confluence API using real-low, but we'll probably give you that access, and it will probably be available for everybody real soon. And also, like, the restriction about making the apps public will go away soon, I hope, in like a couple of weeks or so. Okay, a couple of more things. So as I mentioned before, like these real-low apps are actually installed by users, so there's no admin involved in any of this. So we have a couple of kind of extra things to make sure this access is somehow under control, that you can use this stuff securely. So the end users themselves have this new connected app tab in their profile. So that's going to give them a list of all the apps they have granted access to in there basically on any of the sites. You can also remove the access. You can get some details about which scopes are selected. Admins also get a list of connected apps in the site administrator, so you can see which apps have been given access to your site, and then you can see details about which users have grants for the sites and which scopes the apps have. I have one more thing, a couple of Atlassian-specific disclaimers. I'll just run this through really quickly because I'm running out of time. So this I explained already in more detail. So we have multiple sites. Some users may one site. I can't remember the exact statistics, but it's something like 95% of the users have just one site, and then 5% might have more than one. So most of them have only one, but really, like, you should be able to handle the case where they have more than one. The grants are account-wide, so site-wide. Sorry. So we only give access to one site at a time. So that's a bit different from some other solutions, and kind of as a consequence, different sites may have different levels of access. So if you have one version of your app that only needed read access to stuff, some user might go through that flow for one site, and then you have next version of the app that also needs write. The same user might go through that flow, but on a different site. So you can have kind of mix of scopes on different sites. It's a bit of an edge case, but just something to be aware of. Tokens can expire, so you can use this special offline access scope to get a refresh token, which you can save securely in your app, and then you can use that refresh token to get a new access token without sending the user through the flow again. Yeah, and you should save the refresh tokens securely. They don't expire at the moment, so don't lose them. Scopes can be flexible, so like I mentioned, different sites can have different scopes if the app hasn't been asking for all the scopes for all the sites all the time. And then also something to know is that the scopes are additive. So if you send the same user through the consent flow again, we'll just keep on adding new scopes. So all of the if you send the user with just read, for the first time you get read, and then if you send them with the just write for the second time, they still have both read and write. So if you want to get rid of all the old scopes, the only way to do it at the moment is for the end user to remove the authorization for that app. But really, I guess that's more of an edge case. All the documentation is on developer.atlassian.com. So this link should point into the page where we have the docs. So you can use this link to get started if you want to try things out, or you can just try to Google for Jira 3LO, and then that should take you into the right place in the docs. And that's it.